Hi, this is Joseph Sandoval and we are here at the Open Infrastructure Summit in Denver, Colorado. And today we have with us Joseph Sandoval. You are with the Adobe Advertising Cloud.
Correct.
Right. We have spoken a couple of times earlier, but
Sure.
we focus mostly on technology. But I learned that you do a lot of work outside of the tech world, and you work a lot with people.
Yes.
One of the topics that is close to my heart is inclusion and diversity. And I think this is something that is close to your heart as well.
Yeah.
So first of all, tell us a bit about why diversity matters.
Yeah. Well, so I think I would have to kind of roll back to just my career and being, been 25, almost 30 years into this industry. And, there was a time like in the early 90s when I was kind of getting into it where, I was just excited about the technology. It was like an entry point to get me out of like the life that I was in. It steered me away from an outcome where a lot of my relatives and stuff, the educational system, the criminal system, a lot of times you find in these minority communities, it seems to be that pathway. So for me, this was kind of like a way to kind of like change my life as well as like my family around me. The thing I started really becoming apparent in my career is obviously a lot of the biases that I had to face as being a Latin male. And I also realized it with my journey that the individuals that seemed to be the most, that would reach out to me, that would connect with me, that would help enable me and help me to grow were women. They played a key role in my career. I could point to three, individuals who were just looked at the talent within inside. And yes, I did not come from Stanford. I did not come from UC Berkeley, but they looked at like this individual like, hey, he fought his way in here, and they had the same struggle. So it was almost like you found these like you became allies to help each other. So the more as I got into my career, I started really seeing, especially after the .com period, where there definitely was a club where where was the representation? Like the communities that I grew up in, like I grew up in the South Bay in the Silicon Valley, and I've been in the Bay Area most of my life. And I've seen how the neighborhoods transition and change, and that's a normal thing in the Bay Area. Like we love immigrants. I love to see the change. I grew up in Fremont. If you go to Fremont now versus what it was, it's now this beautiful Indian community of people. But I look at the industry and I'm like, what happened to a lot of other people that have been around here who, oftentimes work in the valley? They clean the buildings, they cook the food, but why are their children not in there? So that's where I started really saying how do I help? How do I enable others? Because I was very fortunate enough to not only find my way in, but people who are my allies helped mentor me and help me to grow. And now I'm really trying to find ways where I can do this as well.
Why do people like to help others? Why do they become allies? What do they get in return?
Yeah. I think, I think, we all intrinsically as humans, we want to connect, and I think that human experience, I think it's way more valuable than like a lot of the material things. And we live in an area where it's a great place to live, people have great homes, and it's a great life. But if I look back in my career of like the things that are the most things that resonate with me, no one's going to remember all this technology stuff we probably did today, because 20 years from now, it's going to be completely different. But it's that human connection, that experiencing, and when you can help someone else and kind of help them see like, hey, there's opportunity for you as well. You intrinsically, it feels good, and I think that's just part of like the human spirit, of like doing this. And I love that part of it. Just some recent trips, had some chance to just connect with people and just see how they live their lives. And the part of that trip, probably the most thing I remember is the people. So I think that's kind of where I think why people love to help and enable, to elevate somebody is just a real rewarding feeling.
Yeah, it comes from within, and you feel that, as you said, rewarding, And if you can change somebody's life and make it better, there's nothing better. We don't have any superpowers.
Yeah.
But this is incredible, where you can. Now, second part of the ally and, thing is, like I also, I come from a different, background, I look at things differently. But sometimes I have not been through what a lot of others have been through. So I cannot have a relationship, I cannot relate to that.
Sure.
So since you work with a lot of people, not only from your own community, but for other community as well, you talked about women, they help you, but they are women, not men. So how to empathize, how to put yourself in someone else's shoe,
sure,
to feel, because you do a lot of work. So what secret do you have? What mastery or mystery do you? So where you can put yourself in those shoes so you can feel what they feel, because without that you cannot help them.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of especially when I'm in those situations, especially with women, because you're right, it's, the great thing is we're kind of in this more awareness of like really understanding where it's a broader spectrum, like before everything used to be so binary how we'd look at things, and now we're actually recognizing that, individuals sometimes, like they could be non-gender, they could be, they could
Yes,
be like,
you're right.
we're allowing them to have that
there,
space.
yes, yeah.
So I think anytime I'm in an area where I sometimes even have times as I'm evolving in my thinking and how I view things, I just give space. I want them to be heard. And I'm like, let me take a step back. And I think part of this came from I had one career about 10 years back where I managed data centers for a cosmetics company, 90-something% women. And I was almost in this role reversal of where most of the Silicon Valley is all males, but all of a sudden now here I am. And I started becoming aware of like, what am I projecting? Like, am I, and here, I'm a rough, tough guy. I play rugby. I'm a very physical, individual. I can come off very strong. And what I realized that is I wanted to hear everybody else first. I didn't want to be condescending. But I also wanted to make sure that I wasn't falling back to the same patterns that I knew that I did not want to project. I didn't want to be the most loudest, or I'm going to assert myself to get my way. I wanted to bring everybody along the journey. And at that time, it was early on with the Amazon days, and I was trying to sell a company who focuses on cosmetics. But hey, this is going to enable us so that we can actually scale. We can actually do something more, and not just say, I know better, or this is, just be unilateral about my decision making. I wanted everybody to understand why we're doing it, bring them along that journey. And what I realized from that is like oftentimes how I projected things or what image I was giving off could have an impact and could intimidate someone around me. So create space, let them be heard, and listen intently so that, and I think that allows us to be allies to even individuals where we feel like, hey, I'm not like that type, but you can still find ways to connect.
Yeah, so listen and step out if needed. Let them.
Yes, let them express themselves.
Now let's talk about some work that you are doing actively, because we are living in a political era where a lot of challenges are there for a lot of community, a lot of people.
Yeah.
So can you talk about what role you are playing there, and about, you mentioned, with the DACA. So can you talk about that a bit?
Sure. So I recently, about like a couple years ago, I kind of started laying the groundwork for this, and I know we probably connected a little bit over a year ago, and I kind of knew where I was like, I wanted to keep talking about diversity and inclusion. But the interesting thing is, and I think a lot of my individuals who I connect with in the Valley at other companies are having challenges, was like the needle's not moving. And that was what I was noticing. I was like, okay, here we talked about it 2 years ago, and we have maybe 5% women engineers, maybe 3% African American women, same for the males, and Latins are right in there as well. And I'm like, why is this not changing? What can I do? And I'm like looking at things like, hey, my career is finite. Like I'm not going to be around here forever, so I'm going to get tactical. And obviously it's probably my Berkeley background where it's like, all right, hit the streets, do something tactical to try to see what you can do. And that's when I started thinking about like, what is blocking some of these individuals? And I identified as like, maybe I could use open source as a way to help create a body of work. Well, that was kind of a framework that I worked from. Then I connected up with individuals there's an organization called Tecaria. It's a play on Taqueria, but it's a nice organization in the Bay Area where it started connecting me with other Latin individuals who are going through boot camps, trying to learn how to code, trying to find jobs. And I'm like, hey, maybe I could try to see if I can try to mentor some of these, which at that point started connecting me up to individuals who I didn't realize was a challenge, was, individuals who were born here, but their parents were illegal and having the right to work. Or even ones who are coming here, and right now we're having that challenge with, even on the border crisis, where it's a border crisis created by our government that makes it difficult for individuals who are seeking asylum. And these are families that are just trying to survive. They're trying to make a living. A lot of it is just of years of just challenges in their countries' stability, and they're just trying to find a better way for their families. So they're coming here, they see technology, a lot of them are coming with great skills, but they're just having a difficult time finding a right to work, and they're bringing great skill sets along with it. So I've started mentoring a few. I've had one individual, he's out working the fields, doing manual labor with his family. But then at night he's coming in and he's learning to develop in JavaScript, building sites, working in open source, trying to create like an entry port for himself. Because like myself, he's not coming in with that background. So that pedigree bias sometimes can be kind of strong for individuals who are coming in non-traditional routes. But the one thing that I found so impressive, Swapnil, about it was I actually connected with this young woman she's going through this great boot camp called Tectonica in San Francisco, run by Michelle Glauser. And they do this really great program where they they really have a good criteria of selecting individuals. But this young woman, Itzal, what I loved about her is that she wasn't just kind of like, yes, she's trying to get a career, she's trying to survive and trying to feed her family, but she's already also teaching in like Girls Who Coach, and she's already paying it back. And I'm like, this is what I love to see, is like, not only these individuals are like, they're reaching out to me for help or others for help, but then they're going out and they're paying it forward, and they're trying to find other ways to pay it back into the community.
Right. I mean, I don't want to get political, but the foundation of America was also immigrant. People, they came here for a better life, and what we are today is because of this diversity, diverse. So when I look at this group of people, we don't know who would be the next Einstein, who was an immigrant, or Steve Jobs, who is also son of immigrant,
Sure.
or Elon Musk, So, but sometimes we label them as well, that people start looking at them as a threat.
Yes.
Instead of, at the same time, we are also living in a world where we have to move out of coal mining and look towards space mining.
Yeah.
Yes, automation is coming, but with automation, a lot of, when we invented wheel, we took jobs of 4 people who would carry things on their back.
Yeah.
But we also created Uber and Lyft.
Sure.
So every new technology takes some jobs, but creates millions of new jobs more. So when we look at these people, and human resource is the most valuable resource you can ever have. So what role can open source play here? Because you don't need a degree.
Yeah.
You don't need a bachelor's degree. You don't have to prove yourself before. So what role can or is open source playing in enabling these people? And some of them are super talented. Almost all of them are super talented. We just don't give them opportunity.
Sure.
So how can open source help there? Because it lowers the barrier of entry.
Yeah, I actually had this opportunity last year at the Open Source Summit. Actually, OpenStack Summit had me speak on the keynote, and it was the only non-technical part of the keynote. And I was speaking about how you could use open source to foster diversity. And what I was trying to highlight is some of the things we had already just talked about, but that, as you mentioned, you can actually come in with very non-traditional backgrounds and improve your body of work, and as well as like, the communities are really great. What I love, and even myself, I've benefited, is just like whether it's like the Kubernetes community, which has been like extremely great about like fostering diversity and encouraging mentorship. And you can go in there and actually find a role, because you've been around open source quite a while. There has been some toxicness around some of these things, and so we're definitely seeing change happen, which is was needed. And now it's kind of like, I think, the right inflection point to kind of, it could be a way forward to diversify technology, because you're allowing anybody who comes in here who like, hey, I can do this work, and it could be non-technical work or not. There's a lot, as we know, there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of just coding.
Right.
But you can kind of get in there and how someone communicates. And so oftentimes when I'm like selling candidates to like into jobs or trying to like give references, I'll talk with managers, say like, look how this person engaged. He's look at how he communicates. Look at the work that they did. And it's really hard to challenge that, because then it's kind of like, all right, now what? Like what is the next stumbling block or blocker that they're going to face? So I'm really like excited to see how this develops. I'm loving to see the healthiness and inclusiveness. And I think if it starts there, especially as our industry embraces open source more as the standard, I'm hoping that this can help move the needle in regards to some of these things, because right now, and I think myself and a lot of other people have kind of been where like, geez, we've talked about this a lot. How do we tactically start like moving this needle? So I've identified that I think open source is going to be that route.
Let's go back to Dreamers for a second.
Sure.
One of the challenges is language.
Yeah.
Of course, if you're born here, of course, but the language of coding is totally different from the language you speak.
Yes.
Right. So I just want to understand, how you help them overall, so that they feel comfortable with who they are.
Yeah.
You should not have to change yourself.
True.
To be able to do what you want to do.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think when I talked about some of my experience early on with women mentoring me, a lot of times what they were trying to do is help to shape me in regards to like, there was some rough edges that I didn't have the cognizance and the mindfulness to think about like how I perceived, but not compromising who I was. So like, yes, you can come in as a Latin male and who you identify as with and feel comfortable with it. But I'll be truthful, probably my first 10 years, I felt out of place. I felt, in hindsight, when I do retrospective, I probably was kind of like was not as out about, hey, I am a Latin male, and I did grow up, and I didn't grow up where you grew up. I grew up in this neighborhood that you probably think is like the less desirable neighborhood, But I finally found my voice, and so I think now we're at this time where we've kind of established that, like, come as you are, like bring that to the table. Obviously, let's not bring in the toxic things, like come, be a listener, be a communicator, show empathy, but be your authentic self is really important. And I even had to make that journey. I mean, I'm sad to say that I was a late bloomer, but I'm glad I got to this meta, and this is what we want to do. We want to keep, because that's going to make the communities that we live in, or our companies that we work in, reflect the communities that we live in, and I think that's going to help create a more healthier environment. But I think also, I mentioned to you that I live in an area on the weekends, I split time. I feel like I'm in this complete left-right world. I'm in this county, El Dorado County, very conservative. I have many conversations. It's interesting that, obviously people know I'm in technology and they feel like there's some threats. I get blamed for Google's problems, and I don't work for Google. And how social media is like censoring their voice, and I'm like, but I'm trying to establish dialogue with them as well. Like, that we need to find a common way to communicate. And like what you mentioned, like I'm trying to establish like training programs for some veterans up there, because it's like, look, we're not trying to displace or take jobs away from one group to another. This is just really trying to widen things out, to create a more, a more like diverse pool of talent that's going to allow these companies and these products to be a lot more reflective and actually have more better, platforms that are going to come out of this, because you're getting all these diverse opinions. The challenge is just like you said, it's just kind of we're in this. It's hard to establish that dialogue, and so it's still a work in progress. I still, but I've not given up. I'm out there trying to really encourage and help, really, take a lot of what we see in the soundbite medias that sometimes amplify or sometimes really puts gas on the fire of this divisiveness.
You said, take your job away. I don't think that is true, because the thing is, there are new jobs being created.
Yeah.
If you want to take that job, go learn coding.
Yeah.
If you are a coal miner, a software developer is not going to take your job away.
Yeah.
And there is so much. Look at China, more than 1 billion people. Look at India, 1 billion people.
Yeah.
They're not worried about somebody is going to take their job. There are so many opportunities that can be created. I mean, if I look at, the modern tech world,
yeah,
there can be so many. Automation also means somebody has to manage the robot also.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to be, but the thing is, as our society change, we have to change our outlook.
Yeah.
We have to start looking at things, and this is also a good sign of a good society.
Sure.
Where you look at the problem and solve it, not get stuck with it.
Yeah, it's challenging, because we do have to admit there has been the success of the Valley, and I think in other cities that were like technology focused, I'll call out like the Seattles, the Austins, all these cities, that there's been a blast radius effect of the success of these areas and this transition. I mean, housing obviously forces people out. I've watched the transition. We've seen it in all our areas. So I think a lot of times what individuals are feeling in these areas is that blast radius affecting them. And so the easy thing to do is they get caught up into the rhetoric of like, something's being taken away from me. But it's also like, I think it's incumbent on a lot of us who are in these positions to be good listeners. We talked about this earlier, and what I'm trying to do is like, I want to get in there, I want to understand. And once I started spending time up there,
to listen to the other side as well.
Yeah, and I actually started hearing something that I'm just kind of like, wow, maybe on my side, like, because we have this like two narratives that are fighting each other. And I'm just like, instead of me like ignoring it and trying to like close my ears, I'm like, as much as it sometimes can be challenging, I want to hear to understand like where this anger and frustration is coming from.
Right. Just the way I judge that is also wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. In a way.
Yeah. So that's some of it, and as well as like when you talk about like, hey, there's opportunities for you to get in there. What I'm trying to do is just because I can understand even when I deal with like individuals who are underrepresented, that barrier to kind of get in at first can seem kind of hard. And so I'm trying to take that same approach with these and say, like, yes, I know you don't know where to start from what step one or step two. Let me tell you what I would do if I was in your shoes, and how can I help you? How can I connect you? So that I just want to show that, I want to like elevate the conversation. I want to try to, see if I can usher some in there so that they realize like, no, we're all in this, and like, and don't allow ourselves to be divided.
Yeah, and this is what is happening right now. We are not even working on finding common grounds, and there are so many.
Yeah.
We are just focusing too much on what separates us, and actually the blame goes to some of the politicians who are succeeding in dividing us.
Sure.
So you are concentrated on that particular region. What about the rest of America? A lot of immigrants are DACA dreamers are also there across. So what is your advice to them? Number one, how they should look at the situation positively.
Yeah.
Number two is, are there any resources for them in their local communities where they can go and get some help?
Yeah, so I definitely am very focused in my area. Obviously, I can only my resource and my ability to do things are
unless
are
we
limited.
clone you.
Yes, but there's a lot of people doing great works.
Mm-hmm.
I think for those individuals, like we are definitely in a very rocky, tough environment. I have concerns, and I wish I had better answers for outside of like individuals who are like that. What I'm encouraging a lot of them to like keep educating yourself, keep getting those tactical skills. Yes, if you can get into a college, and there's some universities that are allowing you to like work around, the statuses that they have. But right now, it's great. We're in an explosion of information where you can get online and you can start learning and teaching yourself. And so, avail yourself of a lot of these resources. Like even this one young gentleman I'm mentoring currently, who's he's first generation here. He was just at the recent Google conference. He was sponsored the year before. He had a chance. He applied for the Open Source Summit. The OSCON. He got there, and for him, it was such an eye-opening experience that he had no idea this whole world existed. Now he's excited to be like, I want to be a part of this. This is what I want. And it was just like, and I want to do things that are going to help. Like I'm doing he's trying to do a healthcare startup for farm workers because they have very limited resources. So my encouragement to a lot of the individuals globally would be, focus on that education. Don't allow yourself to, get divided. And allies around them really need to help, especially ones who are foreign language speakers. It's the one thing I do notice is a lot of times they're getting disinformation. We're going to have a census coming up where there's going to be a lot of concern. If there's going to be a certain question asked, you need to talk to them, talk to your families, talk to their cousins, but help them to realize that, sometimes the narratives that they're getting is not fully accurate.
Yeah.
But I do think there's definitely concerns. I do have worries. But I'm also excited about the role that I think we can do with technology versus some of the negative perception of what social media has done to accelerate a lot of this negativity. Well, we have these great things that are happening in open source and tooling and inclusiveness that I think is going to help these individuals. So, like I mentioned some of these organizations that are like local, like the One Tech Idea is going across, and there's other ones as well. There's other ones that are focused on African American communities. But the key thing is they just need to kind of keep staying immersed. I think a lot of us as allies need to keep helping them as well. Be there for them, help them. And right now, it's going to be challenging. I agree. I've known some already who we're talking about an upcoming summit where we're trying to figure out how do we even get people across the border. So we're still trying to solution some of these things.
We talk about dreamer. What is your advice to potential allies, or who? There are a lot of people who feel, but they don't go out and do something because they don't either have resources or they don't. So what is your advice to them? How they can become allies? How you want to empower them to be the vector of change?
Sure. I think what I've kind of done is this is me speaking more personal for myself, not for Adobe, but Adobe does have groups internally that are trying to work towards it. And the one thing I realized with a lot of these large companies is there's a lot of money being sprayed at the wall without the KPIs of getting a nice return. So I would start really involving myself, and I know it moves a little bit slower, but I started trying to influence and get these groups to be can we actually do something more tactical versus yes, I love when we celebrate a holiday and have some event and we share food and everybody gets into what the culture is, but I'm I'd like to see something more tactical, and we're actually doing programs where we're partnering with universities. So now we're actually bringing in students who want to become a part of this. They're coming from first-time graduates of college, trying to get in, and we're actually showing them here's all the opportunities that are available. And then we're gauging hey, what was our outcome? Did we place any of these? We are sponsoring boot camps, and a lot of times what I realized when we were doing this, we're aligning with some great boot camps, we're doing some great education, but I was there's no follow-through. We have them come in here like an intern, and then they go away. I'm could we earmark certain amounts of jobs for them? I'm seeing a lot of ergs do that as well. So what I would encourage is if we're in some of these larger companies with resources like that, get in there, get tactically, and then help focus on getting outcomes. Let's just not just talk about it. I did kind of have this thing where I didn't want to keep talking about diversity and all these anymore because I was I'm just going to be tactical. But I do think that, there's still amount of like us out there who we do need to talk about it. But what we need to do is we really need to hold these companies accountable to derive towards like, what are the KPIs for these programs? Let's not just keep talking about it and our numbers are not changing.
Do something about it too.
Do something about it.
Awesome, Joseph. It was once again, it's amazing talking to you today, and I was looking forward to this conversation, that will be done. So once again, I really appreciate your time, and I am looking forward to talking to you again to get more updates on what's going on, and hopefully, the world that you are trying to build, we will build one day.
Yeah, well, I think if you come to the Open Source Summit, you're going to see some things that are probably we've had conversations around this. So I hope to surprise you there if you show up there.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.